Welcome to Decoding Autism with Mr. Beal. The goal of this channel is to give parents and caregivers practical tips and techniques to support their children at home and at school. In this video, I will give you a list of things to look out for and questions to ask when evaluating a private autism school. So how do I know what to look for when evaluating a private autism school? My name is James Beal and I have more than 14 years of experience teaching children with autism and emotional disabilities. I've also worked as a coach and a consultant working with teachers and behavior specialists in classrooms and with school-wide positive interventions and supports. I've also worked with programs that are founded on applied behavior analysis. For much of my career, I worked at private schools for students with autism and emotional disabilities. Since I started teaching, we've experienced an explosion in students diagnosed with autism. When I started teaching, I didn't have a single student with autism in my classroom, and the rate of children with autism spectrum disorder was about 1 in every 150 children. Currently, it's estimated that 1 in 88 children has autism. When I started teaching at a private school, most of the students were placed there because of their emotional disabilities or conduct disorder. But I started getting students with autism. The reason this happened is more and more students were being diagnosed with autism, but school districts didn't have autism-specific programs to meet their needs, especially when the needs were for intense behavior. Now, mixing emotionally disabled and students with autism is not a best practice, but the structure and routines I put in place met the needs of many of my students with autism. This continued for a couple of years, and fortunately, many of my students with autism were able to transition back to their schools as more autism-specific programs came online. And with this explosion of more children being diagnosed with autism, we've seen an explosion of private schools specializing in serving students with autism. And like with anything else, there's a lot of great ones out there, and there's a lot of not so great ones as well. So the good news is there's a lot more option for parents who have students with a disability. I'm talking about the expansion of voucher programs and educational savings account programs. If you aren't familiar with these programs, you can research whether or not your state has one or both of these programs. So let's dive right in. What to look for in a private autism school. Let's start with the big view. And I'll start with the administration because it's likely someone on the administrative team will be your first contact. If your child is currently at a public school and the IEP team is looking at placing your child in a private school because the district can't provide the level of service that they need, this is called a private placement. Most likely, a person from the district's special education department or exceptional student services department will be part of that tour. If your child is at a public school and the IEP team is considering a private placement, it's common for school districts to have certain private schools they work with, and they have other students placed there so they have a track record to go by. This is a good thing. You might have done your research and have your heart set on a certain private school, and the district is resisting this. There are a lot of reasons for this, but it's beyond the scope of today's video. But if you're interested in that aspect of private placement process, leave a message in the comments. Okay, what to look for in the administration or the admin team? First thing, background. As I said earlier in the video, there's been an explosion of private autism schools coinciding with the increased numbers of children being diagnosed with autism. Many of these schools are founded by or run by individuals who have a connection with autism. So I want to pause for just a minute and point out that just having a connection with autism doesn't necessarily make a person qualified or competent to administer a private autism school. But I want to repeat, having a connection to autism doesn't necessarily make a person qualified or competent to run an autism school. So, what is the background of the administrative team? Some different areas. Is it educational? This could be teaching background, school psychologists, a counseling background, maybe a board certified behavior analysis, Maybe they were a school administrator of some sort. Another common area is social services, like a social work background, or maybe a background in behavioral health. Another area, very common, is they have a business background. Less common, but you'll run into this quite a bit, is they're a parent of a child with autism or a relative. And then the last area I would just say is a combination of the ones I just described. So I've met, worked for, and with people from all of these backgrounds, and in my experience, the best ones had a strong background in education with a pragmatic entrepreneurial approach to problem solving. Regardless of background, I strongly recommend that you meet with the director at some point during your tour. Even if their background is obvious on the school's website, it's time to ask some questions, and don't hesitate. Here's some questions you might ask. What makes you qualified to direct the school? Another question, if they're a founder, ask them why they decided to start the school. Third question, what was your position before you became director or administrator? Okay, let's move on to the next critical part, and that is the teaching staff, specifically certified teaching staff. Now, certified teacher is a trained educator. A teaching credential shows a teacher has the training. I heard somebody compare it once to a driver's license. Well, maybe, but taking classes and passing the exams takes years. You can't study a manual, pass a test, and get a teaching license. And you also have to earn or already have a 4-year college degree to be eligible for a teaching credential in most states. This, in my opinion, is a must. Now, legally, private schools do not have to have certified teachers. Most probably do and want to employ certified special education teachers. But because there's a severe shortage of special education teachers in this country, many will hire teachers certified in other areas or not certified at all. So ask the question, is the teacher of my student, are they a certified special education teacher? Don't assume they are. Now, some questions you can ask the teacher. How long have you been teaching? How long have you been teaching children with autism? Why do you like working here? These are appropriate questions. Over my career, parents rarely ask me these questions, but I think they're very important. The next critical area is the school's approach or philosophy to behavior management. This is an area often overlooked, but it's extremely important. Why is this important? As a parent, you want to know how your child will be engaged in the learning process, because after all, they're in school to learn skills they need to be successful in life. This is especially important if your IEP team is looking at a private placement. In other words, how will my child be more engaged in the learning process here compared to his or her old school? During your tour, the prospective school should be aggressively pointing this out, like a sales pitch. But this is often not the case. What's often highlighted are attractive features on the campus or something extraordinary like access to animals or splash pad or other water features. There's nothing wrong with this, with the campus having great facilities or special therapy services. Some other things to look out for. Technology as a teaching tool and not just for watching video and playing games during free time. Are there smart boards in the classroom? I toured a campus once where every classroom had tablets, but I found out later they were used strictly for free time and not academic activities. I thought, wow, what a wasted opportunity. Another thing to look for, structured teaching like the TEACH program, or another program, it's called the STAR program, which is ABA based. Now TEACH, which is spelled T-E-A-C-C-H, and the STAR program are common programs, but a school could use other programs as well which don't have to be specific to students with autism. Maybe each classroom teacher is left to choose or come up with their own teaching strategies. This is not negative necessarily, but I'd encourage you to ask your child's potential teacher what they do to engage your students in the learning process. This is one of the most common questions teachers get when they're interviewing for a teaching job. Again, it's entirely appropriate to ask. Does it look and feel like the children in the school are engaged in learning tasks and activities? What does your gut tell you? So even though this section of the video is behavior management, I talked about student engagement first and why it's important. Students that are highly engaged are less likely to engage in negative behaviors. So engagement is essential to behavior management. Engagement goes a long way to prevent crisis and meltdowns. I'm talking about a best practice here. Okay, let's talk about the next part of the behavior management or philosophy. And that's how the school deals with negative behaviors. Because this is the number one reason most students are placed in private autism schools. Remember, I'm talking about students that are coming from school districts. And the best schools I've encountered have a school-wide approach based on the principles of applied behavior analysis to support students' behavior needs. So the school should have some sort of structure or program to prevent and manage behaviors. If they don't, or they can't explain it in plain language, this is a red flag. The other part of this is how the school approaches crisis. So when your child has a meltdown at school, how does the staff deal with it? Which honestly is how well do they respond to a crisis? I won't go into the details of crisis management here, but what's important for you to know is there are best practices in responding to a crisis. And I spent a large part of my career learning and responding to crisis situations and also mentoring others on how to respond to emotional crisis in a school setting. Staff should be trained on how to deal with a crisis. So ask, how does the staff handle crisis and what kind of training do they have? Best practice is yearly training and ongoing training. Keep in mind, programs such as CPI, which means Crisis Prevention Institute, are very common, but they don't go into a lot of detail into how to de-escalate properly. Many programs I've encountered do not focus on de-escalation. This is critically important and may be the subject of another video. Okay, I hope I didn't overwhelm you with information, but keep in mind, I'm not trying to make you an expert. I want you to have some tools that will help you to identify red flags and help you to make an informed decision. To review, I've covered 3 areas I believe are critical when evaluating a private autism school. Those 3 areas are, number 1, the administration or admin team, number 2, the teaching staff, and number 3, the school's philosophy or approach to behavior management. To make this process easier for you, I've included a checklist with questions in this description below the video. I intentionally didn't ask about facilities. You'll have to see them for yourself and decide whether the physical layout and facilities are appropriate for your child. The thing I will say about facilities is they must be physically secure because this is a necessary requirement in schools today. To wrap up, here's a few follow-up questions for the admin team. So number 1, what is the average longevity of the teaching staff? Number 2, what is the average longevity of the classroom assistants? Number 3, what is the turnover of teachers last year? This is an important question because the turnover percentage, if the turnover percentage is high, this could be a red flag. This speaks to how well the school attracts and retains qualified and competent teachers. You can ask, what was the turnover of the classroom assistants last year? These individuals will be working closely with your child, and just like with teachers, it speaks to how well the school attracts and retains quality assistants. Let me know in the comments how you feel about how to evaluate a private school. Also, if you're interested in this type of content, please let me know in the comments section. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons and share with other people who might benefit from this type of content. Thank you very much.